A couple of times during the programme, and I wanted to show you viewers at home that haven't seen them what they look like. These little fellas are zebra mussels, and you can see how they get their name from the little black and white stripes on the shell. Now these guys are non-native to this country, and they're very widespread now in gravel pits and fisheries, particularly gravel pits, and here in the Burfield complex there's plenty of them. Okay, so from just about every submerged structure, from the front of the swim to the deepest snag and all the weed beds in between, you'll find these guys growing. Now, in some situations, that's not a problem, because the carp definitely eat these guys. So it's good news in the fishery, because the fish are going to do well eating them. However, when they get on submerged bits of wood like this, you can see that potentially they're going to represent a problem. If your line brushes across the tops of these shells while you're playing a fish, is likely to cut straight through the nylon you're using. So that's why Adam and I are both using heavy line here at the Blue Pool, because these guys are very sharp, and you need to be really aware of that. And so particularly in gravel pit fisheries, it's worth stepping your gear up to combat these guys.
Okay, this is the rig that I just used to catch that lovely 23-pounder. Again, I'm just trying to be a little bit different with my presentation, but it's still very simple. I'll explain the thinking behind it. A lot of people, in fact the majority of people you see casting out hook baits, they're using brightly coloured pop-ups, highly coloured, high smell, etc, etc. This is high smell, but it's actually a bottom bait. Well, it's called a wafter, so it's designed to sit on the lake bed. It just hovers above the hook. Don't be deceived into thinking it's a pop-up rig with that lump of putty. It sits pretty much like that, with the bait just covering the hook and the hook lying flat on the bottom. It's white or pale white tends to work very well, because any boilies that have been left in the lake for any amount of time tend to go very pale. So these fished on their own as a bottom bait can work very well indeed. So this is a wafter about 16mm in size. I've tied that to a size 6 wide gape style hook using a knotless knot, but I've kicked it out with the hair coming off just by the eye, as so many of us are doing now. Seems to give very good hook holds. Shortish hair, bait just touching the bend of the hook, and then I've got about 1 inch or so stripped back on this semi-stiff coated hook link before I've got my usual nice big blob of putty. The hook link itself, that's about 12 inches long, a little bit longer perhaps than the majority of people are using. I'm not fishing this in weed, I'm casting for a clear spot. It's sort of soft silt where I'm fishing, so I'm happy that this is going to settle down nicely once the foam has dissolved, because when you have a hair tied in this manner, you do need to use a bit of dissolving foam to stop it tangling on the cast. All you do is lick one end, not the whole thing, wrap it around and just nip it up so that it's kind of forming a circle around the hook shank, like that. Pull the hook into it, and that will come off on impact with the water, and then your slow sinking hook bait should extend out, and you'll be left with a nice straight hook link on the bottom. As I said, the hook link is about 12 inches long. That goes into a lead clip, nice and simple, nothing complicated there. 2.5 ounce lead, and then behind that I've got probably a couple of foot of heavy sinking tungsten rig tube to keep everything nailed down. That's the rig I just used to catch the carp. I'm going to get this actual rig back out in the pond now, see if we can catch another one on it. Okay, there you go. The rig's doing the business. The little white balance pop-up. Second bite in a couple of hours on that. Wiped out both my rods again. Real battler this one, but kept him on, near the surface, over the top of the weed all the way in, and no further dramas. So 2 rods to get done again. The weather's still nice and overcast. Looks good for another bite for Simon or myself. So we'll slip this fella back and get the rods back out.
Blue Pool magic. Fantastic. I'll tell you what, I don't know why we don't come here every year.
I think we will now, won't we?
Just reminds you what fun it is.
A special lake, it really
Great
is.
fun. There's lovely fish coming in.
So what tips would you think, to pass on to the guys watching this if they were going to come here, Si?
Well, I've got heavy gear, as we've talked a bit about already. I'm, 20-pound line. Yeah, it is heavy gear.
You wouldn't use line less than 04 here, would you? It's
well,
important.
There's just no point in fishing for bites if you're just going to lose them, is there?
Absolutely
not. Strong gear is important, definitely. It's not fair on the fish.
The other thing, guys, is Simon and I have not cast out one single chod rig. There's just too much weed. And although you might have heard that if there's weed, then you need a chod rig, not when it's this thick. It's growing up to the surface, and that kind of rig will make it harder for you to land the fish. Fish a lead system like Simon's using, where the lead drops off, you'll get the fish in much easier. And if the fish doesn't go into weed, then the lead won't drop off. But with a helicopter rig that you've got on a chod, it's just an absolute headache getting them in. So we would avoid those definitely on waters like this. Thick, strong line, be on your rods at all times. See if we can get this fella in, mate.
Yeah.
It's fighting well, as they all do.
Yeah, another powerful blue pool fish.
Oh, yes.
Well done.
I noticed your lead hadn't come off there, Si.
No, that fish never weeded me up. It was always above the weed, so...
Perfect
yeah.
illustration then, guys. If you put your tail rubbers on dead right, if the fish goes in weed, it'll come off. Otherwise, you know, if you keep the fish out of the weed, there's no need to lose the lead. Perfect. Well done, mate.
Excellent. Good stuff. Let's have a look at him. So here we go, 21-pounder blue pool carp. This one was caught off my spot out in the middle, about 35 yards out over a bit of particle and a little scattering of boilies. This one was on a couple of maple peas, so a couple of little tactics there you could try at home. Okay, so this is the open water rig that I've been using today at the blue pool. It incorporates a short hair, which I've got a couple of maples on, a size 8 wide-gaped hook, a hook link which is about 6 to 8 inches in length, soft coated braid which has been stripped back at the hook end to give a nice supple section near the hook. I've got a quick release clip with a cut down tail rubber pushed over that to hold it in place. Then I've got a drop off lead system with a clip on here, and the idea being I'm fishing with it with a lead not on inline but on drop off, as I said, and the idea is if that fish hits the weed, that lead is just going to ping off and you're going to lose that in the pond. And that puts you in direct contact with the fish, which I think is really, really important in these weedy fishing conditions. It's very difficult to play a fish when you've got a heavy lead hanging about, catching in the weed, and often the lead is what weeds up more than the fish. So I'm a big fan of getting rid of that lead wherever possible. So that's the system I'm using there. Coming back up the line a little bit from the clip, I've got a 20-pound line, very heavy, very strong, abrasion-resistant line, which is excellent in these weedy conditions with zebra mussels. And then away from the clip, I've got 2 or 3 lumps of putty moulded onto the line, which is just pinning everything to the bottom. So there's the open water system I'm using, and I'm very confident with it.
Okay, now for something a little bit different. This is my float setup. It's actually my floater controller rod that I use for surface fishing, but I'm not going to be doing any of that. The sun's come out, the fish have gone into the edges a little bit more, so Simon's gone off stalking and I'm going to see if I can catch one on the float. Something I haven't done for a fair few years, but believe me, it's one of the best fun ways of catching carp that you can do. So a light rod, 12 foot in length, smallish reel, so it's balanced, got a 10-pound line on that, fishing an open water swim, so it shouldn't be a problem. The hook end, I've got a size 6 wide gape style hook which is tied directly to a length of 18-pound braid. Then I've got a swivel at the juncture and I've moulded some tungsten putty around that. The idea being that this sits on the bottom and the hook link is like that and the line then goes up to the float. Now I'm going to set this just about over depth when I get in the swim. I'll put this in and I'll keep moving the float up the line until it reaches the surface. It's a self-cocking waggler style float, and you can see that's free running on the line, but I just use a small rubber like so to attach it and hold it in place. So what I'm going to do is not a boilie, not even a maple pea in sight. For this, it's going to be an old-fashioned wriggly, juicy worm. Or maybe a couple of them. He's not actually particularly lively, so I might not give him a go. I'll find a better one. But it's going to be worms on the float, and I'm going to put a little bit of the ground bait mix in just to get a bit of smell in the swim. We're going to sit back, see if we can catch one the old-fashioned way. Well, it's been a fairly fraught hour or so trying to get a bite down on this spot. To begin with, I caught, all I caught was perch. They were going mad for the worms and taking them as soon as I put them down on the spot. In the end, I had to change tactics, went back to a pair of maple peas, and I also had to put a small, tiny little sliding lead on as well, because the wind was hammering in and the float just wouldn't stay put. Anyway, I've had the bait down there. There's been a few big fish drifting in and out, a couple of bream feeding with them, and I was just deliberating whether or not they could see the line because they looked a bit edgy, when all of a sudden it tore off, hooked itself straight away, float disappeared, buried, and this fella's on. He's taken a fair bit of line and he's weeded himself up about 3 rod lengths out, so I'm just going to keep the pressure on. Let's hope he comes out. There he is. He's a fantastic looking fish. Come on, come on, come on. Oh yes. Float fish maple peas at the blue pool. That's pretty magic. It's been a fair few years since I've had one on a float, Mr. Carp. An absolutely beautiful, beautiful blue pool carp.
Black as you like again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dark fish.
Really, really chuffed with that. Made a couple of changes. The maple peas scored on the float. Thanks very, very much to Simon for not only being a star guest as usual, but for letting me have a go on his spot, which was the only one that was really primed for float fishing. So brilliant. Hope you guys have learned lots watching this show. Tips and tactics that you can apply not only if you come to the blue pool here, but you can use on your own little lakes at home. I mean,
we've done some stalking, some fishing out in the middle. It's been
a bit of variety. So good luck, guys. Give these things a try. Thanks again to Simon.
My pleasure, Adam.
Look forward to seeing you again.